Welcome to the Wall to Wall podcast, brought to you by Wall Ed Tech, where your host, Jared and Kari Wall's passion for technology and learning come together to bring you up-to-date information on what's going on in and out of the classroom. From the latest apps and best practices to current trends, this podcast is Wall to Wall Ed Tech.
Hi, welcome to episode 6. Today we are going to talk about technology in the foreign language classroom. Now, I'm not a foreign language teacher, but I do have one here with me today. I'm going to do an interview with my good friend and colleague, Miss Viviana Tracy, and she teaches Spanish, and we're going to let her talk in just a little bit, but we're not going to take a whole lot of your time because we want to hear what she has to say. So today for our news and notes, first thing to be sure and tell you is be sure to check out walledtech.com. We're doing our 60 days of Google tips. They're being posted daily. They're quick little tips, all under just about a couple of minutes to keep you up to date on what's going on and
That's
how to.
Right. And I'm here today.
Oh yes,
this is
Jared is here.
And if you want to know how to do something simple with Google tools, so if you got a question about how to share a drive or how to add comments to a Google Doc, those are the kind of tips we're giving you in those 60 days of Google tips. So make sure you're checking those out. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're looking for more subscribers, and then you will get updates when those shows are posted.
Yeah, and we've kind of been starting off slowly and building to a little bit more, not really complicated because they're not really complicated, but more advanced, yes. Different things, little quick tips. Yes, I can't believe it's already well into July. Today's July the 9th. This means that summer is halfway over for us. In southeast Louisiana, we get out at around the end of May, and we start the very first part of August. So we are halfway over, but it's given us a lot of time to do professional developments, listen to different podcasts, and do our own podcast and have conversations, and just to keep our learning ongoing. And as an educator, that's always important. But I've been thinking about my classes for this coming school year and what am I going to do to change things. And of course I think about instruction. How can I get my kids more engaged, and how can I let them lead the discussions and kind of prompt them just a little bit and have them go with it. And I've just been trying to think of different ways to improve it. I'm always looking for a way to improve things. And I had a couple little things that happened over the course of the school year from where we just finished, and I always look back and again trying to improve things, and I've kind of thought of how I can fix that, how can I make it work better, and to kind of change a little bit of my classroom management strategies. I've been doing that, and I think when I work on my daily procedures, that's going to kind of correspond with that, so that I can just make these subtle changes, because I want this year to be better than it was last year.
And I think what Kari is getting at here is that as educators, if you want to be a good educator, you need to be a reflective educator. So think back on what worked and what didn't work this past year. And this is the opportunity during the summer you have to start figuring out ways to do it differently and make it better for the upcoming year. And we know that all teachers who care about what they're doing are spending their time doing that. And we hope our podcast gives you some ideas to how you can use technology in a more effective way in your classroom in the upcoming year. All right, let's talk about our technology tools and trends for today. I want to start with a tool we just learned about in the last week or two and have started kind of using on our own. It's called Wakelet. You can find it at wakelet.com. And if you've never heard of it, Wakelet is basically you create an account, and as you surf the web, you can click the little Wakelet button that you've added to your Google Chrome extension at the top on the web bar at the top. And if you are on a website or an article that you found interesting that you want to save to read later and kind of keep it in a place where you can go back instead of bookmarking, you can save it to Wakelet. Why would you want to do this? Well, with Wakelet, you can organize it into folders for yourself, but you can also share your account with collaborators. So if you're in a PLC and you're all researching something, you can create a folder where you share information with those people. So if you're all looking for interesting articles on new technology tips or tools like we do, when we come across those articles, I can hit the Wakelet button and share it to a folder, and then Kari can see those same articles. So basically our research is being shared and curated in this tool. So if you're looking for something to help you organize your web searches and collaborate with others in that search, Wakelet is a tool that you can use. And the last tool we're going to talk about today is kind of in honor of our foreign language talk today with Miss Tracy, and it's an app called Duolingo. It's Duolingo, and you can find that at duolingo.com. And basically, it is an online tool for learning foreign languages that students can use, or adults. It's free, and it's kind of a take on gamification to motivate students in learning a foreign language. So if you want to learn, say, Spanish, it takes you through lessons. You can tell it if you're set up an account, and you tell it if you are a beginner, intermediate, and then it finds what level you're on, and then it teaches you that language, and then it kind of gives you awards and motivates you along the way. You take quizzes and do the little practice skills, and I played with it for a little bit, and seemed like it was a pretty cool way to motivate kids, even adults like me, to learn some new things about foreign languages. So if you're a foreign language teacher and you're looking for a way to maybe have some students learning on the side on their own pace, Duolingo might be something to look in for you. And I'm sure that Miss Tracy will give us a few other items that she uses in her classroom, or that is used in foreign language classrooms that she's familiar with, as we do our interview.
Hi, we're here with Miss Viviana Tracy. Miss Tracy is a foreign language teacher. She teaches Spanish to middle school students. I have had the pleasure of working with her for the past couple of years, and she has become a wonderful friend. And I am always amazed by the amount of passion that she has in her content. So we wanted to get her in here today to do an interview and just to see what all is going on in her classroom. So, Miss Tracy, how are you today?
I'm doing great, thank you.
So nice to have you. So we start off, this is Wall Ed Tech, so we're definitely about Ed Tech. So let's kind of get started with telling me, how do you use technology for your own personal growth as an educator?
Well, I love to use Twitter. Several years ago, our library and technology specialist, Tiffany Whitehead, had hosted a Twitter boot camp, and she encouraged all teachers to look to Twitter for professional development, and it has been an absolute game changer. Before, I still am a department of one, so I don't really have anyone with whom I can collaborate. But once I got on Twitter, I was able to build a PLN, and I found a tribe through Lang Chat, which is a biweekly chat on Thursdays at 7 p.m. Central. And, we just really hash it out of topics and trends in world language teaching. So I'm able to collaborate with teachers from all over the world, not just the United States.
How important is the idea of having a tribe for you in that learning?
So important, because no one else can relate to you in your building sometimes. If they're not teaching your content, if they're not going through your struggles, and if no one's pressing you with those hard, challenging questions of how you can improve and what areas in which you can improve, you're just floating on your own trying to figure it out by yourself, and sometimes you get it really wrong.
Definitely can relate to that. A lot of elective teachers, and that is foreign language as well, that sometimes you are the only person. So this is a way to get you the learning network that you need. Okay.
We kind of skipped ahead here with the technology, but I want to ask, after Kari's fantastic introduction, so other people can get to know a little about you, tell us something about you as an educator. What is it? What is your passion as an educator? What is it you're trying to accomplish?
I love teaching Spanish. I love teaching in a manner that is accessible to all of my students. I have a strong conviction that every learner is able to learn another language. If you've learned your first language, then there should be no reason why you can't learn a second language. And so often we hear that after, I took Spanish 4 years in high school, and all I remember is me llamo es, which is so grammatically incorrect and sad. And it's, to me it was a challenge that the conversation has to shift. How can we ask our students to invest, 2 years towards their graduation requirement or towards their college requirement, how can we ask them to invest 2 years and then walk away with almost no ability? And I truly believe that if you make the language accessible to all students, that all learners can learn. It doesn't have to be just the college bound. It's not just the academically gifted. Some people learn at a faster rate than others, and you just have to accept the fact that, it's going to take more time for certain individuals. But if you focus on high frequency vocabulary, that gives you the most mileage for what you're learning, and if you speak in a manner that is slow enough for your students to process, and you really focus on making your messages repetitive but compelling, you'll have more buy-in and better results.
And I love to hear you talk about what you teach, because I can feel the passion when you talk about it. And one of the things I saw is you hosted a conference this last year for foreign language teachers at our school, and we kind of helped out with the registration part of that, and not one person who came in didn't have something fantastic to say about you and your passion for what you do. So we really appreciate that. It motivates us as teachers to be good at what we do as well. So
thank you. And just having you guys there to do all the technology stuff was so fantastic, because that's definitely not my area of expertise, and it was so much fun the way we had our video conference with Dr. Bill Van Patten. That was absolutely amazing.
We learned a lot that day. I think there was two sides of the room and a lot of button pushing by me and Kari to make the microphones not feedback into the stuff. But now that we're on professional podcasting equipment, we know how to set it up next time so we don't have all these issues.
Yay.
So we look forward to doing it again.
Yes,
right. You say that language is not just for college-bound and academically gifted students, that it's for everyone. So how do you address teaching this in the classroom? What are some things that you focus on to make it more accessible to all of your students?
I think really not allowing the curriculum to drive what we're doing in the classroom is super important, because the national standards just over and over again say, that the students are going to use vocabulary that is familiar to them, and there's also the implication that it's vocabulary that is meaningful to them. And, if you take a textbook that's, several years dated, it's going to have vocabulary that's no longer applicable to our everyday life. And that's just wasted time trying to have kids memorize long lists of vocabulary that they have no intention of using and that has little meaning for them. So I really tried to focus on high frequency vocabulary and then personalize the learning experience. So, we might do a special person interview. Like, we do those a couple times a week, and each student has an opportunity to come up and just talk about himself or herself. It's very highly scaffolded. I have the questions in English and Spanish, and we do a lot of, it's called circling, and it's one of the skills of teaching teaching proficiency through reading and storytelling is the method I use. And so I pull from my skills from TPRS, and when we do the special person interviews, there's a lot of reiteration, a lot of repetition, asking the same question in different ways. It's tiered questioning. So, the kids come up, and I'll ask, what's your name? And then I report back to the class, and then we'll talk about, what are your likes? What is your family like? And it gives everyone an opportunity to kind of get to know their classmates, because at our school, there's over 300 students in each grade level. And, my first few years of teaching there, I was always shocked that, come May, when I say, hey, go hand this to Sarah, well, who's Sarah? Like, what do you mean, who's Sarah?
Right.
Oh, okay, our school's really big, so you don't actually know even the people in your own class. And so this goes back to, building a better community within your classroom, actually getting to know one another, and then allowing the language that the students need to drive the learning.
I've actually been on I've had the pleasure of seeing this side of you when you and I have discussed this before, and about you've been excited when your students got it, and when you've struggled with them, and when they finally got it for those interviews that you talk about, and how excited you were. And that's just a reflection of the passion that you have and how you want your students to succeed.
So here's another question for you. How can you leverage technology in your classroom in order to make it so you can spend more time on the foreign language itself and not so much on the learning process. So how can technology help you to make your classroom teaching more effective?
Well, I've been exploring the ideas of like the digital storytelling, because TPRS is essentially storytelling. I mean, storytelling's in the title. And what we do is we co-create our stories through student output, limited student output. And, sometimes they use Spanish, and if they don't have the word, then no problem. They say it in English, and I write it up on the board, and we keep going. But once we have those co-created stories, we can do a lot with that. So I can, take that story and type it up, and we now have something that we can read. So it's not just something that they've listened to. They can go back and they can read it. And there's a technique that we use. It's called embedded reading. And you basically just keep expanding the story by adding more details. So I like to use that. So I'm thinking that as far as the technology, rather than paper copies, which this is like very basic going towards technology, but rather than having those paper copies, I can just put it in a Google Doc and share it to all of my students in the classroom. And we don't have the hassle of, oh, I lost the paper, or do you have any extra copies? And it gives them a chance to really interact with the document. They can highlight it. If there are words that they don't know, they'll be able to make little notes on the computer, just like they would on a paper copy, but it'll always be there for them. And then as far as the digital storytelling, I love the idea of videoing the stories that we make, and then just keeping like an archive where the kids can go back to it.
And that is in no way a basic use of technology. If you're putting those stories in a Google Doc and now you got kids annotating and highlighting words that they're struggling with, I think that's a great use of technology to do some things that were on paper. Now I might have to go get a textbook, look something up, write something else down. Now maybe I can look that word up immediately and use it as a cue to help me with understanding the story and moving forward, instead of stopping here and having to figure something out. It'll be a little more quick on cueing that student on what's going on and comprehending that story, I think.
As a teacher of technology, and knowing your content is so different than my content, and of course you think with the foreign language it's about hearing, I think I think technology would be something I would kind of have to struggle with, knowing that they actually have to hear it. And I do know that there's different programs and podcasting and screencasting and stuff like that, but I could see that being a challenge. But what you're saying, like Jared said, there, you put that collaboration, that annotating element in there, that's a lot of technology. That's awesome.
Are there any other tools you use? I know you talk about targeted vocabulary acquisition. Or any other technology tools you use in class that help with that sort of thing?
Well, we've done some Kahoots where you can, and Quizlet where you can like actually practice like isolated vocabulary. But I really try not to present vocabulary in isolation. I prefer to do it in context, so that the kids have a better chance of actually acquiring it.
Okay, so like, what are some major content for your content? What are some concerns that you have as an educator? Just like downtime. Downtime when we're trying to, log into, like, for example, a Kahoot. I've had my Kahoot games hacked before, and we have to start over, and just the issue of, my computer's at the help desk, I left mine at home, there are only 2 available desktops, the mouse is missing on this desktop. So just those little annoyances, and I know some of it is behavior, and some of it is discipline, and some of it's just, the reality of life. Those things are annoying, but the concern is that I'm losing valuable class minutes where we could otherwise be engaging in the target language in Spanish, and that's just a missed opportunity. And
I think a lot of teachers would agree with you there, because it's the biggest complaint we have in the technology department, that if the hardware is in the help desk, or if the internet's not working, what am I going to do? It's a reason that a lot of teachers don't want to use technology, because they're afraid the technology is going to fail at the moment of teaching, and I'm going to be stuck here staring at kids and having to wrangle kids who have fallen apart.
This goes along with the support that's necessary for teachers to be able to succeed with technology in their classroom that we've previously addressed.
Any other major concerns? I know you had mentioned to us some concerns you had about student output. What were those concerns that you had?
Well, yeah, output, but also before we go to that, just the fact that Google is such an amazing tool, and we've often talked about how, if we're going to send out, a flyer that goes home, that we can use the translate tool to change the flyer from English to whatever language we need it. So that we can better reach our community and our students and their parents. And that is so handy. And my concern is that my students will also see it as very handy. So rather than engaging with the target language, I get it. Sometimes it's hard, sometimes you're struggling, you don't have time to study, or you had a ton of homework and you didn't take the chance to look at your elective class. I'm just afraid that the temptation to translate from Spanish to English is just going to be so great that, I'll be sabotaging myself by using Google. Yeah. Yeah,
and from a teacher's perspective that doesn't teach a foreign language, I don't speak a foreign language, but I do teach kids who have come in to me who don't speak English well. And I have been tasked with trying to teach them social studies or English. And so my go-to is to create an assignment like I would for any other student and then use Google Translate to translate the text and the questions into Spanish. I did that this year. My problem is I don't even know if what it's translating is
correct.
Is correct. Is it really written properly in Spanish so that it makes sense, that it can be comprehended? And then all I can do is have them write in Spanish and then translate it back to English. And I don't know if it's almost like that old game where you whisper something in somebody's ear, and once it gets around the room, what you get a whole different story. I don't know if the student learned what I was trying to teach them or not. So I can see your concern about technology in that regard.
Oh yeah, we have a lot of fun with the Google Translate goofs. There's always a meme going around on Twitter.
Right.
So what are some upcoming goals for your classroom for this coming school year? How are you going to use technology? Are you going to use it more, less? What's your goals?
I'm going to use it more. I really want to push myself. We often speak like on Lang Chat about teaching using 21st century skills and, not doing legacy methods, not focusing on the form and the grammar of the language, but actually, using modern skills to engage with your students. And if I'm going to be a champion of a 21st century world language teacher, I really feel that I'm obligated to embrace technology. I can't hide from it. It's in my face all the time now. And I've seen how much I've grown just from being able to use social media for professional development. So it's, the time has come. I am definitely going to be embracing it in my classroom. I hope to do a couple of little grant projects, maybe get some equipment for the digital storytelling. I have a good friend, Laura Sexton. She has a blog called PBL and the TL. It's project-based learning, but in the target language. And, it blows my mind that her kids are doing project-based learning in Spanish. And we're talking about like novice level students, so kids who are starting off with little to no skills. And she's really amazing at what she does. And one of the things that I've absolutely admired that she did this past year, she set up a Flipgrid where she sent out, invitations to her PLN and said, hey, this is a topic. I need some Spanish speakers that are used to speaking for learners of Spanish. So if you can talk a little bit about this topic, here's the code for my grid. And she now has this archive of speaking samples from native Spanish speakers, from Spanish speakers who are teachers and people who just happen to speak it, and it gives her students an opportunity to listen, and they are actually utilizing the grid. It's really cool. So I'm kind of inspired to set up my own, and depending on what kind of rules we have at our district, I look forward to using Flipgrid also.
And we know Flipgrid is free now for educators, so we can make sure that happens for you this year.
Absolutely.
Well, it was fantastic having you here at the Wall Ed Tech Studios today, and we were thrilled to have you here. It's always fantastic to have someone on with a passion for teaching and for technology, and we know that you bring both of those to your teaching. We look forward to seeing what you do with technology this year, but more importantly, how you impact student lives, and we will be watching and waiting.
It's been great having this opportunity to speak with you guys. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Wall to Wall Podcast. You can get all of our podcasts by subscribing to Wall to Wall Podcast on iTunes. For more resources, visit walledtech.com. You can follow us on Twitter or find us on Facebook. Just search for Wall Ed Tech. If you have questions, comments, or things you want us to talk about, visit Wall Ed Tech and send us an email, tweet, or message us on Facebook. We look forward to hearing from you.